Hi, this is John with Cloth Guru, and in this tutorial we are going to learn how to make the butterfly. I know you've been waiting to know how this butterfly was created. We are going to go over that now. So the butterfly is actually really not that complicated. Um, the modeling is very simple, and the rest of the setup is actually pretty simple as well. I think you'll be surprised at how simple it actually is. Really, what's making this butterfly work really is the textures. And I happened to have a photograph that I took of a butterfly. It was several years ago. As I visited my grandma's house in Idaho, we found this tiger swallowtail butterfly on an apple tree, and I was able to get up really close to this tiger swallowtail and take a couple of photographs of it. And so that gave me all the photo reference I needed to create this butterfly, as well as the textures that I needed to create the butterfly. So to model this guy, I just looked at my photo reference, and I basically started out like I do with most modeling. I just started out with a cube. So if you look at his basic model here, there's really not a lot to it. So I started him at the origin, and so I'll go ahead and show you what that looks like. So let's go ahead and go to the origin, and we'll go ahead and we'll create a cube, and there's our cube, and I go ahead and place it at the origin. We'll zoom into it here. And basically all I did was I started to push and pull this guy around. I'm not going to go into a ton of detail how to do this because it should be pretty straightforward. Let's turn off our... So it was basically just extruding, 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 extruding. So I mean, it's basically just doing this a whole bunch of times. Extruding this, shrinking it down, extruding this, extruding it again, growing it again, bring it out. Here's the body here. We'll go ahead and shrink this down like this. We'll go ahead and add a cut here in the middle, grow it a little bit. Go ahead and extrude this again, shrink it down like so. You can already see this thing starting to take shape. Go ahead and add something here in the middle, grow this out a little bit. Go ahead and shrink this guy down a little bit here, shrink this guy down a little bit here. So here's how I created the butterfly's head, and body. It wasn't really anything miraculous at all. Just simple box modeling, something like that. And once I start having something that is resembling the shape, I go ahead and I turn on my subdivision surface modifier, and there you can see already I've got the beginnings of a butterfly body. And I did a few modifications to the side. Let's see, what layer is that butterfly on? There he is, right there. So I did a few modifications to the side to go ahead and give it this kind of a shape. Yeah, I mean, it's really not that complex. It's just a pretty simple shape that I just kept pushing and pulling around until it looked kind of like a butterfly. So you can see the shape there and what it's looking like. Nothing too complex. And once that was done, I went ahead and I applied my subdivision surface modifier so that I just had that resolution there in the mesh. So that's the way the body looks. The eyes are just spheres. That's all they are. So I went ahead and created two spheres, and they've got a subsurface modifier on them. This edge split, actually I should talk about the edge split. So the edge split, what this is doing, if I come back here to my fake body, what the edge split is doing is it's allowing me to get some kind of sharp angled edges in areas like the neck, for example. If this is my butterfly's head, let's go ahead and move it back a little bit. You'll notice that in the smooth view, let's go ahead and set shading to smooth. This is a nice continuous kind of shaded surface here. If I go ahead and I add this edge split modifier, what it's going to do is it's going to make these edges a lot harder. So, and then I can go ahead and I can actually change the change the split angle along here, because I only want to split it here in the neck. So that's going to give me some really nice sharp angles in these joint areas, like so that I get nice body segments. So that's what the edge split is doing there. So back to this butterfly. So that's the body and the eyes. The legs are similarly simple. You'll notice I only made the front legs because those were all that was going to be seen. I usually try not to model any more than I have to. I don't particularly enjoy modeling, so I do it as quickly as I can and I move on. If I were to animate this butterfly, or this butterfly had to hold up in a lot of other shots, I would probably add the rest of the legs, and I would probably just model one and then I would duplicate it and create the 6 legs. But here you can see that the leg is also just very simple. It's just cubes that have been extruded, and I've created a segment for each segment of the leg. And I actually didn't really look at the correct butterfly anatomy. I should have, but I was going really quickly. So I probably don't even have the right amount of segments. There are probably more segments than this. But I just did what looked right. And then for this particular segment, to get this kind of scalloped look here that butterflies tend to have, let me see if I can find the other another picture that shows that a little bit better. There you go. So you see this kind of little scalloped leg right here. This isn't the best reference image. I just know from experience that these butterflies have this kind of little scalloped looking leg. And so I did that, by just extruding and just pulling in the centers of these points to get this kind of scalloped look. And then they usually have kind of a little twin hook on the end of their leg there. And so I added that little hook by just extruding again. And so that's what the leg looks like, and I just copied it over to the other side, and then I made sure to rotate those, so that they were in the right position. And I made sure that I also, with my cloth, I made sure that my butterfly was contacting nicely on the cloth here. And I did that by just going ahead and entering edit mode and selecting those parts and making sure proportional edit was turned on. And then I just moved, let's scale down our proportional edit here. I just moved that leg until it was touching correctly, so that it would give me a nice contact shadow if I needed one, and so that it would look like it was actually touching. So that is the legs. The antenna are also very simple. In fact, the antenna they're kind of a little overkill on the resolution here. So you can see the antenna are pretty thick. And the way I did these antennae was I didn't actually just extrude along a set direction. What I actually did was I made curves and I extruded along those curves. And let me show you how you can do that, because that's something that's not entirely it's not entirely clear if you're not used to Blender. So let's go into the outliner, and I'm going to show this make antenna right here, because that's where what I actually used to make the antenna. And let me see what layer that's in. I'm not even sure. There it is. So here's the antenna. I originally made this butterfly at a much bigger scale. You can see this was the scale of the antenna. This whole butterfly was this big until I scaled it. But what I've done here in this make antenna, let's come back to our properties and we'll look in our modifiers. So what I've done is I've actually created a curve. We need to show that curve here, I just realized. So here's the NURBS curve right there. So I created this NURBS curve in my 3D view, and you can do that simply, by going to your add menu, add a curve, and I added a NURBS curve. By default, it will come in with the normals showing, so you might see something that looks kind of like this, and I find this display incredibly annoying, and so I turned it off. I just want to see the handles and the control points of the curve, and so that's the way I created my curve, and I just basically extruded my curve out. You can extrude the curve as you would any other mesh inside of Blender. You just can extrude with E. One thing to note is that the curve, to get the curve to actually go the full distance of your control points, you have to make sure that you stack the control points at the end. So you notice I have 1, 2, 3 control points actually here at the end that are pulling this curve all the way down to the edge of my handles. So if for some reason you're making your curve and it looks, I'll go ahead and let me delete this here. You're making your curve and you're like, why isn't it going all the way to the end of my handles? Go ahead and extrude again and then look at it and you'll see it goes to the end of your handles. Looks like you only need 2. Sorry, not 3. So that's what you do to shape those NURBS curves, and I just pulled it out into a nice curvature there that looked kind of like an antenna. And once I had that, what I did was I created a cube, simple cube, like so. Let's put that simple cube at the origin, 0. And what I then did, I'm going to scale down this cube because I don't want it to be super huge, and I'm going to actually apply the scale. You can do that with Control A, and I'm going to say apply the scale. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select this cube, and I'm going to come to Add Modifier, and I'm going to say Array. Okay. After I have the array, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add a curve modifier right here. Okay, and I'm going to add in my NURBS curve. So you'll notice what's happened immediately. So I have an array modifier which is going to add cubes. If I click along here, it adds cubes, and I'm making it follow my NURBS curve. Okay, just like so. And so what I do then is I just increase the cubes until it fills out my antenna. I turn on the merge so that this becomes one piece of geometry and not a whole ton of cubes. And then what you can do is you can come in here and you can just say apply, apply. And now you have your antenna, basic pieces. And so what I did then was I went ahead and I actually scaled it down a little bit with my proportional modifier here. So I did something like this, to kind of make it a little bit thinner in the middle. And then I think I added a subdivision surface modifier, like so, and that gives it kind of this segmented look, which kind of looks like an antenna. And so that's the basics of how these antennas were modeled. It really was not any more complicated than that, and it gave me this nice segmented look. And I might have, scaled it up a little there on the end. But then I went ahead and I just duplicated it to the other side, and I gave it a little subtle variation in the curve when I did it so that it didn't look exactly the same. And that was the antennas. So that is the basics of the modeling for the antennas. So let's look quickly at the wings. This tutorial is getting close to 15 minutes here, so let's look at the wings. They are incredibly simple. In fact, the wings are kind of disgusting because they're terribly modeled. Um, but I was going fast for this tutorial and they do the job. So basically the way I made these wings is these are not quads, these are totally n-gons all over the place. And what I did, the way I started these, was I basically just made a plane. Let's go ahead and rotate this along X here so we can see it. I basically just made a plane like this, and oops, I put it into that mesh. I don't want to do that. Let's go ahead and create a plane again. So we create our plane. Let's go just look at our plane here. Actually, I'm going to put it on the origin. I find it easier to work at the origin on components, and then translate them out to where I need them once I'm done. So all I did with this is I deleted one side, one vertice. We don't need this guy on. And then I went and I looked at a picture of the wing, and I went and I just extruded. Extrude, extrude, extrude. Let's look at it from the top view. Extrude, 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 extrude. I mean, this is it. This is the wing magic here. And then, I came to the end and I grabbed these two guys and I hit Alt M, which merges them. And there you go. There's my wing. And then I selected all the pieces and I hit F for face to create a face. Then what I did was I made sure to look at the pattern inside of the wing here. You see these kind of veins that are creating the wings. So what I did was I made sure to go ahead and cut this up so that it kind of followed some of those vein patterns. My thought initially was that I was going to actually make that into geometry, that I was going to create a little raised vein geometry. I didn't end up doing that, but I thought that's what I was going to do initially. So the way I created those veins was just with the knife tool, and I basically came in here and I just started cutting this sucker up, and there's one section there, and then I would go ahead and I'd look at it and I'd create kind of this middle section here, and then I would go ahead and cut this here and go ahead and cut it again. And this is how I created the segments of the wing. Really not that fancy. And I did that until I had kind of this basic pattern of the butterfly wing. And really this is doing nothing right now. The only thing that it's doing a little bit of is once I applied my subdivision surface modifier to these wings, it gave them a slight curvature, which the butterfly wing actually does have. So it gave it that slight curvature, and I used it to create kind of just a subtle, not planar wing here. So there's just very slight raised areas on this wing. So this is raised up a little bit. You can see here this is raised a little bit. And that's the way I created the wing. Same with the bottom wing. It's this exact same process, just took a little bit more vertices. And then this particular area I just extruded out. And I happen to know that these swallowtail butterflies, their tails tend to curve like this. You can't really see it in the photos that I have very much. You can see it a little bit here. But I knew from experience that those swallowtails tend to curve out. And so I went ahead and I just grabbed this and I looked at it like this and I rotated it with my R key. And that's all I did to get that twist. I then came in here. You'll notice this is slightly raised like this. It's got this kind of raised look, which the actual wings do have. They kind of come in here and they raise up a little bit. You can't see it so good in this image. It's a little more visible in there, not so much. But they're not planar, they're not flat. They have a little bit of subtle raised area in here. There's kind of a little lip up and they kind of curve down. So this area kind of curves inward towards the butterfly. So I went ahead and I just kind of pushed and pulled these points up and down until I got that basic idea. And once that was done, I took both these guys and I just mirrored them. So I did a Shift D, which is duplicate. So they're duplicated now. And then Control M can be used to mirror. And so there I'm mirroring them across X, Y, Z. I modeled this butterfly, at the origin, so it was all planar. So I didn't have to worry about actually having it not line up correctly, because it all lined up when I actually did it at the origin. But if for some reason you're not modeling at the origin, it doesn't take too much work to kind of get it into place, like so. So there you go. So that's the way I created both sides of the wing. And then you'll notice these are highlighting green. One thing I did just for organization purposes is I actually grouped all of the butterfly together. And so I selected all these meshes, and I think I hit Control G. I believe that is the group command. Yes, create new group. So when you do that, it will actually create a group, and you can create a group in here too under your object data. Come to your groups here, add group, and I just called this group Butterfly. And this allows me to do a few things. It'll allow me to select all the members of the group with certain commands and things like that. Like I can say, select all, where is it? Maybe it was Shift G. Yeah, if you hit Shift G, you can select all the children of a group, all the immediate children, the siblings. So there I can select everything in the group right away, really easily, by using Shift G and selecting siblings, because those are all the siblings in the group. So that's the basic modeling of the butterfly. This tutorial is already going way too long, so we will go ahead and stop it there at the modeling. And in the next section, we will go ahead and we'll talk a little bit more about how to get the fur on and how to do the shading. Thanks for watching.